Ellie, welcome to the show today.
Hey, Michael. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Yeah, you're an amazing person. You've done so many cool things. You've built a giant company. You've managed properties. You have a training company. You have a podcast now, and you seem to be like a very driven person. Where does that come from?
Well, I'll take you back in time about 37 years ago, almost 38. So I'm actually originally from Israel, and I was born to a pretty poor family. And I discovered, where my place was in society pretty early on, and my early childhood, and kind of understanding that there's another way. I didn't know exactly what that way was, but I think the drive comes from there, from experiencing hardships, and as a kid, for instance, when I was 11, I used to clean buildings and synagogues to make help my parents make a little bit of money. And when you go through that, I think it's kind of it may look like a hard childhood, but when you're living it, it doesn't, that's all so it's not actually that hard for you when you experience it. But it does create the fire and the drive to not live this life forever, to protect yourself from living this life. When I was 15 years old, I was sent to a youth village, which is basically kind of there were surrogate families that were helping raising kids, and I was one of them because their parents cannot take care of them. And that also accelerated my growth and my desire to not have, I remember telling myself, when I'm going to have kids, I'm never going to send them to a youth village. They're going to live with me, and I'm going to make sure that I'm on the right path to do whatever I can so I can afford to have them at home, because my parents couldn't. And I guess that's why.
Do you remember, like, there was an instance in time when you said, "There's no way I'm living like this"? Like, do you remember,
Yeah.
like, when that when what happened?
Yeah, so one of the days I came back from the synagogue with the bucket with the water and everything, all my cleaning supplies. And I remember coming back home, and I stared at the door, and our door was kind of really old with tons of stickers on it, and it looked really bad. I remember staring at that door and saying to myself, I'm gonna have a nice door in my house. I don't want to live in a house that looks like this when I'm going to, when I'm going to grow old and when I'm going to be an adult and take care of myself. My door is going to be pretty. And I think that's the first moment when I actually realized that that this is not may not be normal. And also, when you live in a certain environment and you see all the other kids, they get new clothes, they go on vacations, and I never went with my parents to vacation. I think the first one was when I was maybe 18 years old, and it was really, really, really simple, something similar to a motel somewhere in Israel. And so um, I think that moment, me standing, in front of the old door, kind of realizing I want a better door. That was, I think, the first moment that I realized where I lived, where other lived, and kind of what I want for myself.
Do you have a nicer door now?
Yes. Yes, I worked hard for the nicer door, but yes, yes, I do.
That's cool. Now, you also went to law school. How did that come about?
Well, when I was 18 years old, I was very religious. And in my family, when you're 17, 18, 19 years old, you get married. And I thought it was a great idea at the time. And I found myself in an even worse situation because I had to provide for my husband, my ex-husband and I was working sometimes 3 jobs, sometimes 2 jobs. And I realized that this is not sustainable. And I fought really hard to get to law school. I didn't have the grades and the equivalent of SAT exams back then. So I retook the exams and improved, took more classes that I should have taken in high school. Um, and I decided that I'm going to get admitted to a really good law school because I understood from a very young age that education was the way out. Because I didn't have even the minimal amount of money to start anything, to buy any investment. And I wasn't even thinking about investment because at that point you're not in a growth mindset. You're kind of in survival mode. And when you're trying to survive, you're trying to pay for rent, you can't even think about, buying an apartment building or buying a house. And I worked really hard. It took me about 2 years to get into law school. And once I got there, I immersed myself in education. I knew that that was my ticket out. And I actually managed to squeeze bachelor and master's in 4 years. And it was kind of a special program. And I had really good grades, and I got admitted to a really big law firm. And that was the beginning of really, different life for me.
Yeah. So that was kind of your turning point then.
Yes, absolutely.
Now when did you develop a love for real estate?
I remember when I was in the youth village, I was very militant, not in a bad sense of the way, but I was fighting for students, for our rights, and it was a very religious institution, and they did not allow women to walk with pants. We only had to wear long skirts, and I thought it didn't make any sense. And so I gathered everyone's signatures, and I went to the principal, and I started to advocate for why, in today's age, you should allow it. Why there's nothing wrong with doing it. And I was able to convince the principal that starting at 4 p.m. after official school is over, because we stayed after school, we lived there in that village, that we were allowed to wear pants. That was a major breakthrough. And I started feeling kind of that was not my destiny, but that was something that really fit my personality. And I don't know, it felt good. And that's why I thought, you know what, that's maybe my path. They used to call me the judge every time I walked down, the youth villages path. They used to call me the judge because I was kind of fighting for everyone and getting things done. But yeah, that's why I decided to go to law school.
Don't mess with Ellie. I got it. So
that wasn't that scary. I was just
yeah.
very persistent.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
I see a theme now. After law school, you actually worked in real estate, right? In several jobs. So talk about that a little bit, because that's interesting.
Yeah, so after law school, I went to work for a really big law firm, and I was part of the international real estate department. So I was exposed to a lot of international deals. And this is where I actually started to really open my eyes and my mind to other possibilities. I remember my clients were buying buildings, and there were developers, and there were all kinds of businessmen and big corporations that I was helping, creating, building a project somewhere in Europe, for instance. And at some point I realized that I was sitting on the wrong side of the table, that I wanted to be my clients. But at that point, that was my first decent job. I was making money for the first time in my life. It was really, really hard for me to even imagine how I can own a building or a house, a rental house. It was still pretty far away from me, but I understood that this is the way. This is where I want to be at some point. And I just wasn't sure exactly how I'm going to do it. And that was 2008. And obviously a lot of interesting things happened. But at some point I realized that I wanted to be closer to the business side of real estate. And I transitioned to property management. And, people thought it was crazy. You have this really nice job as a lawyer. Why would you want to fight with tenants and collect rents and do property management? And I said, I want to understand how real estate works. I understand how the legal side works, how you can create partnerships, JVs, how you can establish, a new project. But I don't know, okay, once you have everything ready to go, then what happens? How do you take care of things? And that's what I wanted to do.
So you were exposed to real estate, but you were probably doing from very large transactions, and you thought that was pretty cool, but you couldn't connect that size of transaction to your own reality. And it sounds like you hatched a plan at the time, and you acted on that plan, which was go to property management company. But what was your plan at the time? How did you try to apply this giant picture of real estate to your own to your own life? Like, what was your plan at the time?
Well, at some point, I realized that I needed a little bit more education because for me, education was the key to pretty big change. And I realized that in America, I will have more opportunities. I understood it from a very young age, I think, because I have an aunt that she left Israel and she went to America and she was very successful. And that was kind of my role model. And I said, one day I'll move to America. And, I decided that, okay, if now I'm moving away from Israel and I'm going to America, the best thing to do would be to have some sort of a credibility, but how? Because I don't just want to go and start all over without any tangible, something that can help me open doors for me. And education again was the answer. And so I decided to pursue an MBA, and I wanted to also learn more about financial, about marketing and financial reports and how to start companies. And that's, that basically what fueled my decision to go to MIT. And that was 2014. March of 2014, I moved here. And then in September, I started, I went to school for the first time in my life here in the States. And that's it. And then I, never looked back since then.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how did you get into what you're doing now? Kind of, what was your foray into that? The property management job, was that here? Was that in Israel? Or how did you ease yourself? How did you actually get started in business for yourself?
Yeah, so property management was still in Israel. That was 4 years back then where I learned everything there is to know about property management. And then from there, I transitioned to MIT. And so after 2 years, I basically, I said, hey, Cambridge is great, but it's too cold for me. I want to move to California. And that's why I ended up here. And shortly after I graduated from MIT, I started Blue Lake Capital, which is my company, today. And so, at some point, I think after having an MBA, I knew, okay, I can always fall back to that. I mean, if things don't work, I can always get a decent 6-figure job at any tech company, real estate company. This is my safety net. And that eased my mind because I knew if I can try now, I can take a risk. And if this doesn't work for any reason, what's the worst that can happen? It's not going to be successful. I'm maybe going to lose a little bit of money. Okay, I can always go back and become, project manager, product manager, whatever it is, maybe an acquisition manager at a real estate company. But, at some point you realize that everything you've done in life really prepared you to where you are today. And there was no way back, because if I've gone through everything that I have so far, for me, working as an employee, meaning that there's some part of my potential that I'm not really fulfilling. And I wanted to try and see. I remember, back in law school, we studied, I learned about self-made men and the U.S. history, and that really sparked my imagination and my interest, kind of reinforced my interest in moving here. And I said, I'm going to be a self-made woman. And I think that's kind of what I did. It was scary, yes. When you just start, you have some self-doubt moments and things are a little bit scary. But for me, it was scarier not to try and see what can happen. That was, for me, scarier than anything else.
Well, let's talk about that, because a lot of people, they're faced with the idea of quitting their job or down their job or doing a lateral, even taking a step back to do what you did. You went from being a lawyer, arguably took a step back, and
Right.
to a property manager job, and then you could have arguably another step back by going to school again, right? And so a lot of people won't do that. They wouldn't end up. And you said it was scarier not to do it. Why was that for you?
Because then I knew that living with that what if, thoughts in my mind, they're not going to leave me alone. And I think at some point, part of it is, of course, from my childhood, the fire that I had to succeed and push. I think if you come from that environment, it doesn't matter how successful you are. It's always going to feel like you have to keep going. You have to do more. because I think in my mind, I can always fall back to that place again, even though technically I'm not going to say almost impossible, but it's going to be very hard to be poor again. But I think it's, that's one part of it. And then the other part is really believing in yourself, and it's easy said than done. My parents always told me when I growing up, they always said, you're going to be something big. We believe in you. And if that's what you hear as a kid, why wouldn't you believe your parents? You believe everything they say, right? And that's why I keep telling parents when I see them, I'm not a parent myself, but I say, have to encourage your kids and tell them what, even if you don't truly believe in it, because they're going to believe in it. And once you believe you're going to succeed, you're starting to act even in a conscious and unconscious way, in a way that would set you up for that success. And other people are going to perceive you in that way. And that's going to somehow, at least going to increase your chances of actually succeeding. And yeah, listen, change is scary. I think maybe as an immigrant, I have a lot of appreciation of living here, and everything that this country, has been given me that I didn't have back in Israel. It's just, there's so many opportunities here in the U.S., so many. And I really believe that if you can, even if you don't believe in it, you can tell yourself, I'm going to succeed at some point. You might start believing in it. And that could be the first part of the change.
Well, I think believing in yourself is a key factor, right? Because if you don't believe in yourself, you don't even try, because it's useless.
Yeah.
Why try anything? So you must have had a certain amount of belief in yourself to do it. And your plan was being worked out, in phases. And when you got your MBA here, and now you're thinking real estate, what was your plan? What was your real estate plan? Because a lot of people, they might start flipping houses or doing this, and you're going to school. And what was your big vision for yourself with real estate?
So when I went to school, I actually knew that I would start a real estate company, but I didn't know what kind of real estate. And school really gave me the opportunity to kind of explore. And, when you go to business school, you have a lot of companies that, they go there and they woo you, and they have all kinds of presentations. And it really gave me the opportunity to explore and understand what types of real estates are, businesses are out there. And that exploration continued even after, I graduated. There's a lot of pressure when you're there. You spend so much money on education, you hit the pause button on your life for 2 years, you make no money, you got to figure out what you want to do. And some people just don't, and they need more time, and that's totally fine. And I gave myself that time. So even after I graduated, it was still not clear to me 100%. But then I started to explore more. And I started by saying, okay, how about fix and flips? Is that what I want to do? And I started attending some events and listening to podcasts and talking with investors. And I realized it's not what I wanted, because, it's interesting, it's dynamic, but once you only have cash flow if you work. If you don't work on a project, the cash flow is not there. And I had an idea in my head of a certain cash flow that is, coming in every month, every year. And it didn't just quite fit my needs at that time. It still doesn't. And then I said, okay, maybe, single family homes and rentals. And again, I started exploring. Every decision I've made was based on education. And it was important for me to educate myself so I'll know what I'm facing before I'm even starting. And again, I went to conferences, I read books and listened to podcasts. And I realized that I'm getting closer, but it wasn't quite it, because I had a certain goal, and I started from the end. I said, by the age of 50, this is how much I want to have a net worth. And then I worked myself back from that point and kind of reverse engineered how much I need to make every year starting today. And I realized with single family homes, I would need to buy thousands and thousands of homes, or at least hundreds of them every year. And that was not sustainable. And then I remember I was on my way to one of the conferences, and I was listening to a podcast. I think it was Bigger Pockets. And they interviewed an investor that was buying multifamily properties. And I didn't even think, I thought it was way too big for me at that point. And he was speaking about syndication and how he does it, how he raises money from investors. And I remember sitting there in the parking lot, I didn't make it to that event because I was sitting there listening to the podcast until it was over. And it hit me that this is what I needed to do because it's exactly what I wanted. I can scale. It will give me a certain, passive income. Even when I'm not physically remodeling any single family home or doing any active work. And that's when I basically started to learn everything there is to know about multifamily investing, syndication, how to communicate with investors, where to find them, and how you can buy a building, improve the operations, push, income, increase income and sell it at a profit. So in a way, it's kind of a long-term flip. But that was it for me.
So that spoke to you. You said, I got to do that. Didn't have all the details worked out, but you're like, that's it. You were
Yeah.
searching for something. You kind of knew it existed, but you didn't really know what it was.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Talk about your company today. What do you guys do have? Like, give me the scope of your company because it's impressive.
Thank you. So we own multifamily properties. We like Class B assets, so they're not the high-end Class A luxury buildings, but they're also not old buildings. And we like to do, moderate value add. So basically, we're going to renovate anywhere between, we're going to invest $2,500 to maybe $7,500 to improve the interiors of the units, maybe the exterior as well. And then after 5 years, we sell the property. And we do that with investors. So we put some of the down payments, investors put the other part of the down payment, and together we just buy buildings. That's what we do.
That's fantastic. And you also have fantastic training programs as well. And so that's pretty cool that you're doing it in the podcast, which is pretty neat that you're doing that as well. And if you could have a conversation with your younger self, like what would that conversation be? And at what point in your life would you have that conversation?
Yeah, I would actually tell myself what I told myself back then. Don't listen to the doubters, just keep going. And I had many, many doubters, and they didn't necessarily, they meant well. They wanted to protect me from heartache, from, failing. And I just never listened to them. I have someone, I had, kind of an unofficial mentor back in Israel. And I remember consulting with him whether leaving my job and moving here would be a good idea. And he asked me, what is it that you want to do? And I said, I want to start a real estate company after I graduate. And he said, I don't think you're going to succeed. And I asked why? And he said, you're not a white American person. And these are the only type of people that succeed in America. And I looked at him and I realized he knew nothing about America. And that was, I realized that I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to him, and I'm not going to take his advice. He taught me a lot of good things, about property management and about, communicating with people. But that, all the doubters, I just did my best not to listen. People heard that I'm taking a huge loan to pay for MIT was, just tuition alone was $120,000, and they could not believe it. They said, in this amount, you can buy a house in Israel. And I said, guys, a house, that's not my dream. My dream is to use that so I can buy many more. And people were just not, I think a lot of them were projecting their own past failures, fears, through their own specific plans. And I just decided, that's not going to be me, and I'm going to succeed. And that's it.
Yeah, it's important to listen to people, but you also have to know, who to listen to. And so you had a mentor that you listened to for many, many, if not most things, but you were able to not listen to this particular advice, which is great because, you could easily have been discouraged. This is my mentor, and he's talking me out of it. You could have simply acted on that, and you didn't. And it's like that for all of us. There's, if we can compartmentalize what people are saying, sometimes you might agree with, or you like a person, you mostly agree with them. Sometimes you disagree with them, but, can you filter out those things that are right, that feel right to you and whatnot? And so that's really super important. I want to get your opinion on something. As you know, this business, and you talked about, you being a white American. I don't know if he said male or not, but in this business, as you well know.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, it's a male-dominated, industry, right? And I'm wondering if you have a theory of why there are, not more women doing what you're doing.
Yeah, it's a good question. I honestly don't know if I know the answer to it. Maybe it's because women are a bit more risk averse than men, and there is an inherent risk in investing in basically, taking a loan and raising money and investing in a building that may or may not increase in value. That could be, part of it. But besides that, I honestly don't know why. And I never really thought, not even once in my life, that, if I couldn't make something happen or I didn't succeed in something, I never said, oh, it's because I'm a woman or because I'm not American. And it doesn't even matter if it's true or not, because there's nothing that I can do about it. And so for me, the focus is, what can I do to improve myself? If I didn't get the deal, or if I failed to do something, what can I do to improve myself so I can get it the next time? If you're, starting to think it's because I'm a woman or a minority or whatever it is, even if it's true, it's not productive, because you're focused on what's wrong with society or with other people and not what you can do. So work harder. You might fail again and again, but at some point you will succeed. And America is such a great place because there's so many success stories of immigrants and women and minorities that did make it. So it really goes back to just focusing on what you can change and do that, and don't focus on others, and because you can't change others, you can't change other people, and it's really destructive to think about it through that lens, to be in that victim, position. It's not good, it's not productive, it's not going to change anything. And if you're not going to try, I mean, you're never going to know if you're going to succeed, and the guaranteed way to fail is not to try.
That's great. You're now a successful operator and syndicator, but you had do a podcast called Ready to Scale, and you have some training programs. Why do those things? What are you trying to accomplish there? Why not just focus on investing?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, part of investing is also reaching out to investors and kind of allowing them to invest with us. And through the podcast, investors can listen to my podcast and learn about who I am, what I stand for, and that makes them feel, I think, more comfortable knowing who they're investing with. That's one part of it. The second part is I'm still a huge advocate of education, and through, my podcast, I interview a lot of successful entrepreneurs, and I've learned a lot about real estate, even through those, episodes, and could be about maybe raw land or flips or other parts that I personally don't really practice. But there's always something new that you can learn, even from people who are less experienced than me. Maybe they have a very unique way of boosting rents or operating the property in the way that I haven't thought of. And so it's a never ending process of learning. And I have a document where whenever I have, I hear a really good idea from someone that I'm interviewing, I'm writing down these ideas and I'm trying to implement it in my business. So that's one part of it. And, you asked me also about the mentoring program. I really enjoy seeing other people's succeeding and be part of their path. There's something very rewarding about it. And so that's one reason why I'm also doing this. Of course, it's a paid program, so there's the financial benefits. It's not only that I'm enjoying, helping people build their lives, but that's a big part of it. And I have several teams that I work with that are part of Blue Lake. So that allows me to do basically everything that I love to do, which is talk with investors, find deals, run the podcast. I don't do it all on my own. I have a team that edits the podcast and invite guests. So that way I can focus on what I'm really good at and what I enjoy, and have the team take care of everything else.
So what do you love to do, and what are you good at? I think you mentioned a few activities. You like talking to investors. You like showing up for the podcast. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you love to do? Or like, if you had your ideal day and activity list, what would you focus on if you could?
I think asset management is something I'm really passionate about, actually. Surprisingly, I didn't think that I would. I did property management before, so that's kind of interesting to me. But I really enjoy taking a certain property and then improve it. I think that's exciting when you see how the financials are, improving. And when you're able to increase the profits, when you're able to creatively think what you can do with a property, if you want to add reserved parking, if you want to somehow, create new processes or take properties and move them, to work virtually, especially in today's DNA, in today's world, actually with the pandemic, these things are really exciting for me.
That's awesome. Now, your podcast called Ready to Scale, and you talk about building and scaling your business. Why do you love that part of it? Why do you talk so much about that?
Well, that's something that I was exposed to back at MIT, how to build and scale startups. And I basically took what I've learned there and I've implemented in my business. And that's what I'm teaching my students. And I think it's extremely important because if you don't know how to scale your business, then you're trying to do it all on your own. And you're gonna burn out. Your path to success will be a lot slower and you're going to be more frustrated. And so there's really magic about scaling, because instead of doing everything manually, everything on your own, there's really a way to grow and grow quickly. And they're also, lean, in the startup world, there's lean operation, which is basically how you create a company, using a very, very, lean resources and lean team. And you can basically implement all those theories and all those practices when it comes to establishing a syndication business. And that's what it is. That's what I built. I never wanted to be a syndicator. I wanted to own a syndication business.
What are some of your advice to someone to build and scale? There's really at least two phases. One is a startup. You talked about the lean phase where you don't have any revenue really coming in, yet you need to start something. You need to almost bootstrap something. What's your advice for building and scaling a syndication business?
I think the number one thing is to map out the business that you want to create, and instead of just starting and slowly growing, just look at the entire business from A to Z and understand, okay, if you're doing acquisitions, for instance, if this is your focus, then what are the different steps in acquisitions, and break it down to certain assignments and tasks. And then once you have the roadmap, then break it down to who you can bring that can help you basically carry the certain tasks. So instead of trying to find the deal on your own, for instance, and analyze the deals, negotiating with the seller, closing, why not outsource underwriting, for instance, or outsource the sourcing, just finding the deals so you can underwrite. And when you have all the different tasks laid out, then it's easier for you to say, okay, I want to focus here, and this is what I'm going to outsource. And outsource can be, I can hire someone, to help me do that, or I can partner with someone and we're going to be partners, and he can take care of one part of the business and I can focus on the other part. And, don't rush to hire people as W-2s because that's very expensive. You can find people on Upwork, for instance, and there are other platforms where you can basically find people and pay them by the hour. So you can set a very small amount for, a very small budget could be $500 or $1,000 or $1,500 a month. And I know not everyone has that, but you can assign, this amount of money and have them work and pay them on an hourly basis. And that's one way of scaling, because then while you're talking with investors, someone else is helping you look for deals and underwriting deals. And that's basically how you can cover a lot more than if you had to do it on your own.
So what I'm hearing you say is know what the roles are in the syndication business. What are they? And then kind of playing into your strength a little bit, right? So because there's multiple roles, and some things you may be good at or love to do, and some are not. So is that what I'm hearing you say? Focus on kind of what you're good at, love to do, and then possibly joint venture or outsource or delegate or automate some of the rest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And another tip that I can give your listeners is, if you absolutely have no budget and you're willing to train someone, you can post a job and hire an intern on Handshake. It's a website that basically has almost all the universities in the US. and you can either pay someone a stipend, could be, $500 a month, which is very minimal for a part-time job. As a former lawyer, I want to caution people from hiring anyone and not paying them, as an interns and have free internship. There is a way around it. So check with your lawyer. I don't want to give any legal advice on how to do it. It's something that people should really be careful about, but there is a way to get the, students that are hungry to learn and improve, build their resume. And if, without any experience, you can teach them how to do things. You can teach them, maybe how to help you with the website and do some marketing, or you can teach them how to source deals, maybe even underwriting if you feel comfortable, and you can always review their work. And for very, no money or very little money, you can actually have people help you build your company.
Yeah, I love that. And the other one is just by offering potential equity, right? People especially want to get into the syndication pace, for analysts. Hey, you'll underwrite for free and I'll give you some equity in the deal that we do. There's so many creative ways of doing that.
Absolutely.
And this is what I love this business as well, is that there's so many different roles. And if you're a generalist, then you get a lot of variety. I love doing different things, so I love it. But if you want to specialize on one thing, then that's great. And you can partner, outsource, or to that. And I love that. Ellie, what are you super excited about right now?
Super excited about the moment that I can travel again and go see my properties. So I'm in Santa Monica, California. My properties are, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. I'm excited to go back and see them because we still carried, on with some projects. I want to see the units. I want to see, the amenities. That's the thing that, I'm kind of eager to get on a plane. And technically I can do it now, but I'm still going to wait a little bit longer until I'm able to do it. But I'm really grateful that I have a really good property management, the company that I'm working with. So properties are in good condition, they're in good shape, and doing, pretty well during COVID. So I'm not worried. I'm just eager to see, because I'm used to fly out and visit the properties every quarter, and I'm kind of missing that action.
Yeah, you and me both. I'm kind of getting stir crazy. I'm ready to hop on a plane. I don't care where, as long as I'm on a plane somewhere,
Yeah.
So, Ellie, how can people connect with you?
So if you Google Ellie Perlman, and Ellie is spelled Ellie, you will see my website. It's very simply, it's, ellieperlman.com, and you can leave me a message. If you want to talk investing, you can also, fill out the investor form there. But that's the best way, to reach me, or you can email me at ellie@ellieperlman.com.
Ellie, thanks so much for being on the show. You're a true inspiration to really anyone who has to deal with any setbacks, which is essentially all of us. So thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely, Michael. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, so much good stuff. I just love her experience, her background. She has ability to teach. And so definitely follow Ellie. If you want you want to hear more of Ellie, join us at Dealmaker Live. Go to dealmakerliveevent.com and make sure that you join all the speakers there, but specifically she'll be talking more about building online thought leadership platforms as well. So that's really cool. I really like her advice about, hey, what's going on right now. I interviewed Brandon Turner last week about this COVID thing, and his advice was stay calm and stay the course. And I think that is really, really good advice. I think it's very easy to get caught up in what's going on every single day. Something else is going on. And, I got to say, I mean, I think I'm getting stir crazy myself. I'm obviously leaving the house, but there's something when you are really kind of bound. You can't do the things that you were doing it for in the same way, or you're doing it differently. I mean, there's something a little stressful about that. I think people are stressed in general, which I think why we're seeing such unrest in the world. We have COVID and we have protests and I don't know. I think humans need an outlet in some way, as misguided as it might be. But the point is this. As much as things are going on, I'm not saying you should belittle sickness and illness and death and violence and injustice in the world. But I think staying calm and staying the course is probably good advice. I think sometimes we can use it as a distraction. Oh, this is going on. Oh, now this is not the right time to do this. And I think my conclusion in life is that it's never the right time to do anything. I mean, think about it. 3 months ago, it was the hottest real estate market in the world. People were like, oh, maybe I should wait until it cools down. Well, it cooled down, Okay, and now people are like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's not a good time to get started, is it? So when exactly between 3 months, 4 months ago, and now is it a good time to get started? Was it a single day? Was it a half a day? Was it 2 days? Like, when exactly was a good time? And the point is this: it's really never a good time to get started. It's never perfect. If you're waiting around for the perfect environment, either in the world outside or in yourself with your personal life, it's just never going to happen. What I'm saying is, if you want to get started and change your life with anything, whatever meaningful you want to do, you want to lose weight, live better, work in your relationships, quit your job with financial, with real estate, the time to get started is right now. Now, should you adjust your strategy based on what's going on? Of course. Now, we're underwriting deals differently now than we did 3 months ago. We're building in 6 to 12 month reserves because the lenders require it. Right? We're not modeling a 3% rent increase in year 1 or 2 or 3. We're more conservative, and that's okay. It's the same thing but different. And I really reminding yourself of what your goals were literally 3 months, 4 months, whatever, 6 months ago, beginning of the year when you set the goals for 2020. Some things you can't execute on. Like, for example, we were going to go travel, to Asia and Europe this year. We had it all planned out for literally a year and a half, and we can't do that anymore, and that's disappointing. And so that goal, I can't execute on that goal. But what goal can you execute on, and what goals are you deferring for whatever reason, for fear or anything like that? Just take a look at those things and stay calm and stay the course. I think that's fantastic advice as well. So thanks, you guys. Appreciate it. Hope you'll join me in Dealmaker Live in a couple days. It would be great to see you there. Catch you guys next time. Hey, and before you leave, make sure you subscribe to my channel below. We put out videos every single week, and you don't want to miss it. Also, if you haven't done so already, grab my free ebook here, okay? It's a secret to raising money to buy your first apartment building deal. It's a good one, so grab that. And hey, check out another video.